Hello everyone. Today is the 61st episode of Stories That Impact, and I have my lovely guest, Karen Tisdell here. Hi Karen, how are you doing today?
Hello, great to be here. So thank you for describing me as lovely. I think that's very kind.
You are definitely. And
Oh,
Karen
wait until we have this conversation. You might disagree. I don't know.
we'll see. Well, Karen is from Sydney, and everyone struggles to capture their experience, their vast experience, and on LinkedIn specifically, they don't know how to put their skills, their stories onto the LinkedIn profile. Now, if you are something like that, Karen can actually help. Now, Karen began her LinkedIn career or profile writing business actually in 2009. With challenges at the home front, Karen actually maintained her vision and mission to help people with how they show up on LinkedIn. Now, a decade later, or more than that, she is ranked one of the top 8 independent LinkedIn trainers across Asia Pacific. She grew a supportive network on LinkedIn and helped people to learn and grow. Her clientele list includes Telstra, HP, Australian Institute of Project Management, Servcorp, and many more. She has also been an impact to me during 2020 when I started following her and her trips and a lot of sessions where she used to go and speak, help my LinkedIn profile be a little better. With that, I would love to welcome Karen again. Karen, let me ask you this question. I saw your LinkedIn profile. I've connected with you long back. I'm following you, all the posts. Amazing. When did all this started? When did you thought that, I'm going to help people build their LinkedIn careers, LinkedIn profiles, I'm sorry.
I'm an accidental entrepreneur. So I never, ever dreamed of having my own business. But I am somebody who thinks quite deeply about a lot of things. And I've always been a little bit obsessed with human behavior. So when I was working as a recruiter for 14 years, I started using LinkedIn in 2005 because the CEO at the time of a large recruitment agency, Channing McLeod, that I was working for, spoke about how great LinkedIn was. So I went and got a LinkedIn account. And it was probably in about 2007 that I thought, my gosh, this LinkedIn tool is really amazing because I can find anybody anywhere in the world to employ, but I can also reverse engineer my success and I can search on LinkedIn for people who I would want to have as clients. And so that was one kernel of an idea. And another kernel of an idea around the same time was just talking with my peers about who they would pick for roles. And sometimes I would say, oh, this person's really great for a role. And my colleague would look at their profile on LinkedIn and just go, yeah, nah. And I'd be like, why not? And they're like, I don't know, just don't get a good feeling about it. I'm like, really? Why? Why not? This person's great for your role. Because I would get commission if I put them in a role. And I'd be like, why can't you see? So I became very interested in how we show up online. And then I started my business in 2009 Really very accidentally, like so accidentally. I never dreamed of having a business. I just always thought that was something that people who were full of original ideas had. And I don't think I'm somebody who has original ideas. I'm somebody who takes other people's ideas and can polish them, but I'm not good at that ideation. And I was on maternity leave and the GFC had hit, and I was bored being on maternity leave, and I wanted to start working, and my husband didn't want me to work. Um, I smile as I say this because it was just such an uncomfortable time, but I also think this is such an important story, because I think that other people out there may perhaps relate to how suburban and mundane my issues were at the time. But my husband, we were old parents. I was 36, which is not really old, but I wasn't a young parent by a long shot. And so I was 36 for my first child, and my husband didn't want me to work. He said, no, we've waited so long to have children. You should just be devoted to the children. And I'm like, or the child at the time. And I was like, but I'm bored. And he's like, well, if you're that bored, you can polish my shoes if you like. It's like, I know. We're still married, by the way. We're still married. Isn't that amazing? And so I just had a chance conversation because I mentioned I'm not great with thinking up ideas. I'm not a natural entrepreneur. I'm not an ideas person. I can take somebody else's ideas or lots of ideas from different sources and regurgitate them, but I'm not good at that original kernel of an idea. And I was just in tears with a girlfriend of mine, Inga, actually, who's now a business coach. And Inga Bennett was just said, well, why don't you start writing people's LinkedIn profiles? Everybody comes to you for LinkedIn advice. All of the people who've been made redundant in the recruitment industry and all the job seekers, and you've got this huge growing network. It was quite a big network on LinkedIn at the time. I'd like, I don't know, 1,000 connections or something. That was a big deal way back when. And she said, why don't you start writing LinkedIn profiles for people? She said, and you could do that while you're at home. And so I just started doing that. So my business just sort of started accidentally and without the support of my husband. And I really wanted to have a big fancy website, and he wouldn't pay for that, which was probably fair enough. And turned out to be, because I wanted like a 10 grand website. And it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I didn't have the financial funds, my own financial funds, because it was our money, to put behind a business. So I just thought, well, you know what? It's free to post on LinkedIn. So from 2014, pre-2014, you had to be an influencer to post on LinkedIn. And I only had sort of 2,000 connections at around that stage, I suppose, maybe 3. And so I was not an influencer. So from 2014, anybody could post. And so I did. And I just started creating content because it didn't cost anything to post. And I just grew my business really slowly over many years to the stage where it is now. And while it's not an empire now, it pulls in a pretty good, I'm really comfortable, and my husband is pretty happy with the money that I bring in now. So it's been quite a journey to get to where I am now 12 years later.
Wow. That's really really amazing, because when you said that, I can understand, because I'm one of those guys as well. We have our child late, really, at the same time you did. 36, I was 37, 38 by then, and the first baby. So I can understand the thought process, because it's a late child. You just take care of things. That's the whole
It
point.
sounds so sexist, that he was like, "Can't you just stay at home?" But also, I think, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Sorry, I cut you short, but I just sort of think, when you are a late parent, when you have all these expectations,
Yeah.
and And I just, my battles were so mundane and so suburban, but there was so much we didn't talk about before we had children. I just kind of assumed that of course I'd go back to work, and he just kind of assumed that of course I wouldn't. And so it was really, and when I looked at the recruitment industry, I just sort of thought, I don't know if I really want to go back to recruitment. I don't know if I believe in it anymore. I don't know if it's something I really want to do. So, and I was passionate about LinkedIn, and I could see that when you had a great profile, a really great profile that captured your unique strengths, you would attract work to you. And I saw that so many people were shaping their LinkedIn profiles, talking about what they'd always done in the past. And then they wondered why they were still getting that. And so I felt that I had a formula as a recruiter who had been tweaking resumes for, 14, 15 years, sort of this formula around, well, what is it you want to do? Where are you going to in your life? And let's talk about that. So thinking about your own journey, Amit, you've come from such a humble background, haven't you? When you were working as a cleaner, you don't talk all the time about cleaning. You talk about where you're going towards. Look what you're doing now. You're doing IT and you're really successful, and you need to not big note yourself, but you just need to talk about where you're moving towards and what your transferable skills are. And I just saw a lot of people talking about what it is that they could do, not what it is they wanted to do.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. You're absolutely right. I think the key is that, like you rightly put across, it's the current situation is definitely the thing, but where we want to go, that's one thing. And your skills, how they're, because people are sometimes stuck in their heads that the skills that they carry either from their education or their current role are the only skills they have, and probably they're going to die with. They don't understand that there are many skills that are transferable, and you can also improve on certain other areas to land into certain place. And of course, LinkedIn has, in last decade or so, LinkedIn has turned out to be one of the most powerful tools in a way, when it comes to jobs, recruitment, or even knowing people,
And
because
growing business,
exactly.
getting clients. Um, I'm in my 12th year of business, and I only got my website in March this year. It wasn't 10 grand. It wasn't a 10 grand website, but it wasn't the cheapest website. I'm quite proud of it. And spent a bit of my own money on it. And and so I've grown my entire business. I've flown around Australia twice with Telstra. Twice, they've flown me around Australia, and I didn't even have a website. So I think even for business owners who think, I need to have a website and I have to have business cards printed and I have to do this and I have to do that. What I love about LinkedIn is that, which I think is really relevant for the times we're living in, where a lot of people have side hustles or they're reinventing who they are. It's so, the wonderful thing about LinkedIn is you can wake up tomorrow and look at your LinkedIn profile and you can change it. It's not like a website or something you've invested so much money in, and then you've woken up tomorrow and then gone, actually, I don't serve those clients. I serve these clients, and so it's wonderful that it's something that is iterative. You can build it slowly over time.
True, true. No, absolutely. I think that that's one of the best part of LinkedIn is because yeah, you're not stuck with your regular site and the maintenance and the many things attached to that, in fact. And I've just joined Telstra tomorrow. Day after tomorrow is my first day.
They've been very good to me. They've been very good.
Yeah, they are a giant of an organization.
Mm.
All right. So now coming back to the story, to your story. So tell me something about, like, if we need to tell world about Karen, how would you describe yourself?
Oh, goodness. There's this hashtag going around at the moment. I don't know if you've seen it. This little girl is me. Have you seen it? Um,
This
I
yes, I
yeah,
did. I did.
hashtag.
People pitch pictures of, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've not contributed to that. I think I'm one of the few people who hasn't. I haven't written a post about this little girl as me, just because I feel that my journey is, um, I don't know. I just have days where I wake up and I just pinch myself and just think, like, am I really living this life? Like, ow, how did I get here? And that can be a real challenge. It means that sometimes I've struggled to to ask for the fees that I should be asking for because I haven't valued myself enough. But I just, who's Karen? I was really, I haven't put this in writing on the list. This little girl is me. So, I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, something that would surprise a lot of people to know. I grew up in Western Australia, which is, a great part of the world. But I grew up in one of the two worst suburbs. There were two bad suburbs growing up, um, when I was growing up, and I grew up in one of them. My granddad in England felt really sorry for me, for being born into the family I was born in, which is kind of a weird thing, but he just, he and my mum never got on, and he wasn't very nice to my mum. He often said that he felt my mum was a bit of a disappointment to him. He felt that my mum had married beneath her. I married somebody who he considered quite working class and uneducated. And so my granddad, who I was very close to, we spoke about him talking about the Second World War before the show started tonight. And my granddad paid for me to go to a private school. So I grew up in quite a rough neighborhood, but I went to a school that was quite nice. It was quite fairly posh, you know? So I grew up with these 2 lives, and that was really interesting, And then, I didn't go to university because my parents had divorced, and, my mum said that even with a grant or anything, we wouldn't be able to afford the school books. So she talked me out of going into university, and I allowed myself to be talked out of it really easily. And I went to England instead, to live with my granddad and care for him in his older years. And so I was in England for 3.5 years and then came back to Australia and got back into recruitment, and then followed the next door neighbour to Melbourne and then to Sydney, where we got married. So, so who's Karen? I think, I run my own business, but it's just been so accidental for me. My life has just been not, it's not full of huge highs and huge lows. My battles have been quite small and probably quite boring, but I also think that they're battles that a lot of people have had. And I think one of the things that's really got me through is that at times when I've doubted myself, I've put myself out there on LinkedIn. And even though I haven't contributed to this little girl as me, I've put myself out there and I've been myself. I've spoken about whatever it is I'm working through or thinking about. Whether I've spoken about that in a post or I've direct messaged people who I don't know very well on LinkedIn, and I'm still building that relationship, because sometimes it's almost easier to talk to a stranger than it is to a friend. And I feel on LinkedIn, I've grown a wonderful support network, or support networks. I feel I've grown communities of people, some of whom have become really good close friends. One of them, Diana Brooke, she and I met on LinkedIn and followed each other's posts for years. And we're talking about going away together for a girls' weekend in a few weeks' time. And we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So we didn't meet on the street or at a party. We met on LinkedIn. So these people have become my real friends. And Sam Squirsk, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Swirsky. Sam
Okay.
Swirsky. Yeah, good luck with that one. So he wrote a post recently which really resonated with me about, You know, on LinkedIn, you can choose your cheerleaders. You can build your tribe, you know, you can put yourself out there and just share your ideas, because it's bound to resonate with somebody. And as Sam so cleverly said in his beautiful post, he said that he didn't have a university degree. He didn't believe in himself. He didn't think he had a lot to offer, but he just kept turning up and creating content. He just kept turning up and building those relationships. And I think that's something that I've done too. You know, I've just consistently turned up and built those relationships. And as a result of that, when I post, I tend to get quite a few comments and likes, and I'm not in any engagement pods now. Oh, I've got one tiny little community. It's not an engagement pod. You know, I'm not in anything like that. The reach that I get is organic, you know, and it's real, and it's based on real relationships. So I think that LinkedIn is a great place to get a job. It's a great place to get clients. But we need to remember that LinkedIn is first and foremost a relationship management tool, and that you can grow support network here that have got your back.
Wow. Wow, Karen, really amazing. I mean, I didn't knew up to this level of information about you either. So
I don't
I'm
think I've
glad
ever
that
talked
you
about
shared
it again, so I'm probably blushing a little bit. Should we move to the LinkedIn question we've got? Thank you so much for dropping the question, Harish. I don't think it's anything I've ever shared before, but I just think it's, yeah, I don't know if I've ever shared, but I just think it's really important that people build relationships. I think a lot of people, you know, to Harish's great question about who do you accept as an invite, and who don't you, I think a lot of people are on LinkedIn at the moment, especially with creator mode, thinking, oh, I'm just going to create content. I'm just going to create content. I'm just going to, you know, this is a free advertising platform and I can stand on my soapbox and I can create content. And I think, no, this is not a content creation platform. This is a relationship building platform. You know, we create content to share ideas, but it's the relationships that's really important. So to answer this really great question, is it good to have a very large count of your connections? No, it's not. What do you think, Amit? Do you think it's a good thing? So I personally think it's not about fame, doesn't pay the bills. And for me, one thing that has been a real challenge with my marriage and with my business is making sure that it makes money. Because if it doesn't make money, then my husband's like, seriously, what are you doing? He doesn't talk about polishing his shoes anymore. He daren't. But you know, like I need to. It needs to make money. So time spent just growing connections. They need to be people who can refer business to me. I can refer business to them. We can learn together. There needs to be some sort of trade-off. Being famous for famous's sake just doesn't pay the bills. So for me, I'm all for having a connection strategy around, Harish, it's such a great question around, you know, who do you want to build your audience with? You know, who are going to be your ideal clients or your ideal employers or your ideal peers? You know, who are those people? And think about fringe networking. So fringe networking is a term I made up for this idea that you can sort of, rather than dive in there and introduce yourself straight away to the people who you'd love to be friends with, just sort of network on the fringe and get to know the people who know them, and just get yourself sort of closer and closer and closer. But don't start building relationships with random strangers just so that you've got the numbers, because then your content is going to go out to a whole load of people or countries or you know, groups of people that you're never going to do business with.
True. I completely agree. And well, I mean, great question, Harish, and very well put across, Karen. So, Harish, just one more thing as well I want to mention here is that, you know, just building numbers or having thousands of followers or connects is not gonna help, because it's not just, from, of course you want to look out. If you don't look out, let's say, from the point of you know getting any business, suppose you're not doing any business, you're working, right? Still, having meaningful connections, what meaningful connection means is that, where you can share knowledge. Okay, because that's one of the, like, I agree with Karen on completely that, it's a building relationship, right? It's not just about, hey, can you help me with this, or, once, and then you vanish off, right?
Mm.
So the whole idea is that, like, when I connect with I have some connects who are CEOs, for example. So when I connect with them, it's not to get a job in their organization, it's to learn how do they maintain their things at that level, the emotional things that they go through, that I can learn and adapt to it, so that's one of the things I would also
Mm.
like to add up there.
Yes, such a really great question. I think it's so important to make sure that you're building your network thoughtfully. So I use the word mindful. Not that I'm big on sort of practicing really mindfulness, but I from what little I understand of mindfulness, I think it's such an important concept. This idea of being mindful in every area of your life, thinking, if I do this, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And thinking, if you're just spending so much time either creating content or growing lots and lots and lots of connections, then the quality of those relationships might not be quite so good. Now, I do have a fairly large network, and I do have creator mode on to make it a little bit more difficult, I suppose, to connect with me. So I do have a sizable network, but for me, I've grown that many over many years, and I don't say yes to everybody who sends me an invitation to connect. I have to sort of think about what my end goal is.
I agree. Certainly,
Mm.
certainly, definitely. I think one of the things that LinkedIn also did is what I have now. Instead of people sending me, I don't have that huge network, but still, I'm inching to 4K now. It's still a huge number for me.
It
But
is a
one,
lot. Yeah.
yes, it is. Well, one of the things that I also did was that I put LinkedIn for people to follow me instead of just connecting, so that also helps me to not go through many aspects of, whom should I select and what, and
Yes.
probably not being rude, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just means that you can spend more time nurturing the relationships you have. So I've got a summit. I'm involved in a LinkedIn lead generation summit that's on right now, started today, and um, that's being organized by Kate Hall-Lacey. And I direct messaged a lot of people in my network saying, I'm in the summit. There's a few speakers. Here's the link. I hope you might find it interesting. I did have a couple of people come back to me saying, one of whom was quite sharp with me, saying, something like, I don't appreciate this message. And I left him a voice message. And we sort of ended up sort of having these few exchanges where he said, I feel like you're trying to sell me something. I'm like, no, I'm not. I was just trying to be helpful. But I think that, so many people sort of think often about creating content as the only way of having conversations. But I think it's really important to spend time nurturing your network. And I think you can nurture people by sending them a link to something that you genuinely think is interesting or helpful for them. Sometimes it may offend some people. So, it's best not to do that en masse, and try and sort of think about, will this be genuinely helpful for them? One of my favorite things to do is to send podcast episodes, because that's so personalized, so I will be listening to a podcast episode and I'll just be going, because I love podcasts, and I'll just be thinking, oh, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is such an insightful podcast that I was listening to Amy Cuddy talk to Brené Brown, the other way around, actually. Yeah, that was right. Amy Cuddy was talking to Brené Brown in the Dare to Lead podcast. And I thought, wow, this is such a great podcast episode for people who are in change management and that sort of thing. I think it really explains that. And so I sent it to a couple of people and I thought, I'm going to have a search on LinkedIn. How many people do I know in the change space? So I think this would be appropriate for. And then I sent that as a message to them saying, I've just listened to this and, I think it's really interesting how it's speaking about the Great Resignation and changes in social trends. And, and I just thought you might find it interesting too. And so
Yeah.
people have come back and gone, wow, it's pertinent. It's very specific to me. It's not a spray and pray. It's very targeted and it's bespoke. I also try as well to leave a lot of voice messages. I think, when people accept your invitation to connect, just, Amish, if you're still, Arish, sorry, forgive me, if you're still there sort of thinking, well, how do I take those casual, or any other listeners are thinking, how do I take that casual connection to that next stage? How do I take somebody from, I think you're really interesting, can we connect? What do you do once they've said yes? And one of my big things is to leave people a voice message, sort of saying what I do, but starting it with a thank you and ending it with a thank you. Thank you for accepting my invitation to connect. You can see my expertise is around LinkedIn. If you've ever got any questions, let me know. We're happy to send across some resources. Don't ever offer to have like a free chat or something like that, because it just sounds too salesy. I can send you a link if you ever need anything. Thanks again for accepting my invite to connect. So I think voice messages or video messages are really powerful when somebody's just accepted your invite. What do you do? Do you nurture relationships in a similar way?
I
Amish, what
do.
do
I
you
haven't started.
nurture?
I do nurture around storytelling. So what I generally help people with, for me, it's all about stories. And I rotate a lot around that and leadership, how you can basically use storytelling in your corporate life, and that's what I do. But I completely agree with you. Like, I love when people send me voice notes on LinkedIn. It's so personalized. When you hear the sound of that person, even if it's like 3 seconds, thank you, welcome, that 2 words. When I wish somebody happy birthday and they just send me thank you very much, and I'm like, ah, so sweet. And it's like, I really love that. I'm not doing it. That's a bad thing. I should do that, but I
You should,
love
because
it.
you've got a great voice. You've got a great voice.
Thanks. No, I should definitely, because I really love it. It's very personalized, and I like that. I haven't received a video message yet, but voice messages I've received a lot, and I love
Yeah.
them.
In theory, voice messages should be more powerful than voice messages. Video should really be more powerful.
Yeah.
However, I really struggle when I receive video messages, with one exception, which is I get video messages sometimes from Douglas Burdett, who runs an amazing podcast called the Marketing Book Podcast. And so whenever he sends me a video, I'm like, oh, I get really excited. But for others, I to be honest, I often think I'm right in the middle of working. I'll look at that later, because it's almost it almost feels like sort of overload. Like I've got to listen, I've got to watch it, and I've got to stop my flow. While when I get voice messages, John Espirian in the UK, who's a wonderful LinkedIn trainer and profile writer, he sends me quite a lot of voice messages, which I'm grateful to receive. And I'll listen to him while I'm on my way to the kitchen to go and switch the kettle on. So it gives me that I can multitask that, so I can sort of get up from my desk and change my shoes or something, like, or get myself a glass of water. So it's quite nice like that. And I
I
think
agree.
we love voice because it's so trusted. I think when we get a written message, we think, is that a spam bot? Is it a VA? Like, is it from you? Like, I think we've all automatically, when we receive a written message, we're not too sure. Great question. How to make use of LinkedIn effectively for career opportunities? Oh, I could talk about that for a whole day. I think it's really important to optimize your LinkedIn profile. One of the key parts, so thank you, Pratish, for that great question. One of the key parts of your LinkedIn profile, which I see sadly underutilized, is people's LinkedIn headline. Don't you see the same, Amit? The bit that sits underneath people's name. And you've got 220 characters there, and so many people don't use all those characters. And it's a great opportunity not to write looking for a new role, but to write down the keywords that people would use to search for somebody like you. Because if we think of LinkedIn as each person's profile as having a relevancy ranking, you need to have it keyword rich, and different parts of the profile have a different weighting. And that headline has a very heavy weighting. So it needs to be keyword rich, and it needs to get to the point really quickly. So make it, you can add something that's interesting or amusing or funny or personal at the end of that, like aspiring mother of the year, or I don't know, whatever you want, yoga enthusiast, sort of at the end, but start with the types of roles that you're looking for and the job titles. So I think that would be my
Wonderful.
key tip.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Pritish, for that wonderful question. Let me ask you about something about. So we, in the LinkedIn profile, we have the image, our own photo, then we have some stuff. Now there's areas like skills and recommendations and so on. So how much people look into like these areas of skills and recommendations? Do we need a lot of recommendations or?
We do. Yeah. I think they're only going to become increasingly important as our society becomes increasingly cynical. I'd not like to think we're not all getting more cynical, but I do think that people with the last couple of years we've been through, I think a lot of people I've got another tip for you in a minute, Pratish. Thank you. So I think people are sort of getting a little bit more sort of insular and wanting to sort of be a bit careful about who they're connecting with. And we've had a lot of cybersecurity issues, and people are just wanting to bunker down a little bit more, perhaps. Maybe we've all had a lot of time at home, and we're just not quite ready for that mass networking like we used to be a few years ago. So I think people are looking more at the recommendations to think, is this somebody I really want to employ? Is this somebody I really want to do business with? Have they got the social proof of a lot of LinkedIn recommendations? So my profile services, as an example, I take payment upfront for my profile writing services. And I think it reassures people that they can look at my skills endorsements and go, well, she's got like 250 endorsements or more, I think, for LinkedIn profile writing. And she's got 110 odd recommendations. Yeah, I think she can write a profile and I can trust her on that. I think it's social proof. And I think people are looking to be reassured that they're not going to be ripped off. And I think that helps. And for career job seekers or career hunters, you can also look at the recommendations that people have given to look at what they might be looking for in an interview. So if, for instance, Pratish, you're going for an interview with Amit and Amit is going to interview you, you have a look at all of the, Amit's very senior, has given quite a few recommendations, as most senior leaders have, and you have a look at the recommendations that he's given to go, what does he value? And what he tends to say, if he's saying, I really enjoy the stories that people speak and I'm really grateful for this person's honesty or this person's openness, you think, what does Amit value? He values openness and honesty, so you can look at that for clues to also help you with your job search.
Great tip, by the way. Really, really, really. I don't think I thought it in that sense yet, Karen. So thank you very much for
So
that.
it's good to give them and good to receive them. And it's good to read
Yeah.
them for that social proof, but also as part of your research, whether you're a job seeker or you're looking at selling something to that person, you need to sort of think, well, what's the right approach for this person? So sort of reading what they've given will give you a good sense of what they want, what they value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now, sorry, moving on to the next one big part, there's this big section of projects and stuff, right? So, and I think I know, like you said, if we sit for the whole day with you, we'll actually might need more than a days to cover the whole LinkedIn thing. So I'm not gonna do that. But just this one last thing from my side is that how do you take care of those projects aspect? Like how many people are confused that how many projects should I put in, and what is the key elements that I should take care of?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great question. I don't like the project section on LinkedIn, and I don't believe that many people read it. Now, I don't have any stats on that. I do not have any data on that. But I did survey like 32 of my clients, 32 either clients or prospective clients, people who were inquiring. And I said, look, just while I'm just doing a survey at the moment, can you just tell me, what do you think, what are the parts of the profile you look at the most when you look at a profile? And none of them said projects and volunteer work or board roles and, not-for-profit things. So if you've got projects, I think it's really important to talk about them in the experience section
Okay.
and or in the about section. The experience section, I think, is really important. And I think it's so underutilized, because when I asked people what parts of the profile do you look at, what I was expecting and hoping for people to say was the about section. Because as a LinkedIn profile writer, that's the hardest part to write. So I really feel I'm earning my fee by spending a lot of time on the about section. And I think it's really a really hard bit to get right. And I don't always get it right the first go. Sometimes it takes me a few iterations to make it perfect. I wish it didn't, but it does. And yet when I asked all of these people, most of them said they look at the photo, the headline, they glance at the banner, and then they go straight down to the experience section because they want to see, is the person currently employed? Where have they worked previously? What are the job titles they've had? Now you've got 2,000 characters, including spaces, for each role in the experience section. So I think we should take our projects and start talking about it in the experience section.
Good point.
So it gets read. And I think you
Good.
can have lots of detail there, lots and lots of detail. I don't think you should use all 2,000 characters. Which works out to be something like about 280 words or so. I think you want to aim for somewhere between about, depending on how many roles you've got, if you've had quite a lot of roles, then you might want to aim for sort of about 80 or 100 words. If you've only had a couple of positions in your whole career, then maybe aim for more like sort of 150 sort of words. If you're running your own business, you really want to pull a lot of attention to that. So you really want to be looking at about 200 to 250 words.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I think because you're absolutely right, because there's about section, then there's summary, then experience and projects. And people get confused and they sometimes duplicate information as well. And I think that actually creates more mess than actually, highlighting it nicely.
Do you think
When
so? Yeah, I don't mind it being duplicated in the project
Okay.
section. I don't mind it being duplicated, but I do think it's important that it is put in the experience section.
Okay.
So interesting that you're saying it feels overwhelming. That's really hard for me to answer with real objectivity, because I've been using LinkedIn since 2005. So for me, when I look at LinkedIn, I don't feel overwhelmed. But when I was surveying these people who were asking about my LinkedIn profile writing services, many of them were like, I don't want to read all of that. I just want to go straight down to the experience. And many of them spoke about being overwhelmed
Yeah.
with information. So yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I think for me also, if I'm looking at somebody's profile or if I'm joining a new organization, I'm checking something, I actually check, the photo, the title. And in fact, I do the same. I go jump to experience first, just
And
to
then
make
you go
sure
up.
that, then I go up and see if there's anything in about us. And then I check if there's any, featured article stuff, if they've put anything across. But I rarely go down, very down to look at all the other things that they have done. So, that's a fair point that you mentioned. Like we want to make sure that the about us section and the experience talks about us very well.
I think
Yeah.
the about section is really important. And like I said, I'd love to say that it was the most important, but unfortunately, even though it's the hardest bit to write, it's actually not. But it
True.
is important to have, and because, we do want to do our research. We do want to connect with the right people. We do want to, I spoke about, I just feel that people are being a lot more selective in terms of connecting with people. It's a little bit like, if I can make a terrible sweeping generalization, you often hear, and I'm only repeating other people here, it's not my own experience, um, but you often hear that some of the younger generations don't have eye contact as much, that it's a bit of a generational thing to not do eye contact. My generation, we tend to do a lot of eye contacts, which can be quite intense sometimes. So I think quite similarly, I think that you're seeing now sort of people not wanting to just connect with everybody. I think you're typically seeing people wanting to have lots of followers, but not connections.
Yeah.
Connections are golden because you can DM them. You can DM them and they can DM you, but it's
Yes.
important that those connections are meaningful, and it's
Mm.
important that you are giving those people something that's about you, and that about section does really share who you are and why you do what you do, while your experience section talks about what you do and how you do it. So that about section needs to be the why piece.
Well said. Well said. Fantastic. Wow, it's almost 45 minutes. I this that happens with me when I'm with my guests. I don't think time is always a thing. But anyway, so now just wanted to ask you before I ask my last question. I want to ask you, if Karen, someone wants to connect with you and seek your help when it comes to LinkedIn, be it anything, whether they want to take care of their profiles, whether they want to learn something from you, how should they connect with you other than the link that I shared? What exactly, how could you help them? And what
Absolutely.
level?
Thank you. So my process is not to have 10 or 15-minute conversations with people. I know a lot of people do that. I don't do that. I What I do to help everybody is I have some resources. So I've got a resource on a top 10 profile tips. I've got a resource on how to write your about section, how to write your experience section, how to do your headline, and what to put in your background banner. And then I've got another article that's about recommendations and skills. So when somebody wants some help with their LinkedIn profile, I do not sell and I do not get on a conversation. I just say, here's some free resources. If you do want to engage my services, fantastic. That's great. There's absolutely no pressure. I'm very transparent. You can see all my fees on my profile. Like, I actually say that my fees are $1,975. That's Australian, not American, US. I am also very open on my LinkedIn profile. You can see that I don't connect globally. So I do only work in the Asia Pac area. So if people do send me an invite to connect, because hopefully they've listened today and they thought it was quite interesting, but they're outside of the area that I work within, just because of time differences, I do actually keep my niche fairly sort of local to Australia and local to Sydney, because my family say that my voice is really loud, and if I'm doing a 6 o'clock phone call, everybody in my family is complaining. So they're all like, "She's so loud." So I stick to people who only have sort of a few hours time difference with me. But you're welcome to send me an in-mail. Send me an in-mail. Follow me. Send me an in-mail, and I will reply to your email, your in-mail, with some free resources. So,
Awesome.
but I don't do the hard sell. I think we work best with people when we're very helpful. Here's a whole load of free. So I think we all need to be like famous chefs. Give away all your recipes, and people will queue up at your restaurant. So that's what I'm doing. I'm giving away all my recipes.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's really nice, because I think very less people do that, because they I should not say this in a way, but it's like you have some bait, and where you just give a little bit first, and then then you ask them to purchase something and stuff. But it's really nice that people would see certain value anyways from all the things, and then it's about you know uh, availing your services would be to get the expert mind and work on it properly,
Mm.
because let's be very honest, it's not easy for everyone. At least for me, for example, I just don't think I can learn everything on the planet, right? And that's why people like you and the experts are around to help and guide you further, take steps further.
We are, but that comes at a cost. And
Of
I
course.
know what it's like. When I started my business, I didn't have the funds. The idea of spending, you know, um, whatever my website did cost me in the end, sort of 6, 7,000 on a website. For me, that wasn't something that I could afford. So if you do your profile yourself, you may not get a 10 out of 10 website. So if you do a website yourself, you may not get a 10 out of 10 website, but you might get a 7 out of 10. And that's good enough, because hopefully all of my content has given you specific enough advice that you can go, this is Karen's framework. And this has given me that, all of, like, I try and just give out lots and lots of knowledge so you can consume all of that. And
Wow.
you can get maybe not a 10 out of 10, but you could get a 7 out of 10, especially if you listen to things like our episode today and, you listen to the podcast guest episodes that I do. You can go, oh, and there's another thing that Karen said, so I don't believe in bait and switch or whatever they call it, because I just think we're in the era of the internet, right? Just follow me everywhere. You can find out everything that I do. You won't have my 10,000 hours of experience, but you can find out everything that I do, and you can do it yourself, and you don't have to pay a cent. And you know what? You're probably going to become my biggest fan because you've consumed so much. And so one day in the future, you might go, well, you know what? I'm ready to pay a couple of grand Australian, and then I'll pay Karen. Or I've got some people who've never paid me and they've referred all their friends to me. And that's
Right.
lovely. That is so
Right.
lovely.
I agree. I think that's the key. What you said. It's sometimes it might not be that just that person, but they can refer because they got so much of value from you. Is that, and that's the trust that was built over a period of time. And eventually they're like, hey, you need help, go to Karen.
Yes.
So absolutely. No,
Yeah, I've
that's
got one guy, Ash Plaisted. Now I haven't written Ash Plaisted's profile. He's never been a client of mine. He's referred like 6 people to me. 6.
wow.
I mean,
Wow.
amazing. So um yeah, so I think we all need to be famous chefs, and I think that's a public goodwill. So I think there are some weeks where I just think I don't have time to create content, but I create content because I know what it's like to not have that money. I know what it's like to want something that you can't afford. And so I think just give it away, give everything away, because it's like breadcrumbs, you got to follow it all to put it all together, and they'll become your biggest fan. So I think everybody should just give everything away. None of this, give me this and I'll give you an email address, and like I don't do any of that.
Lovely, lovely. No, that's really nice. I think there's a lot of things that I learned today as well, just about apart from the LinkedIn that anyways I've been learning from you for last a year or so. Fantastic. Wow, it's almost an hour. With that, I think Karen, I have a last question to ask you. And the question is, I ask this to everyone actually. Do you think that sharing stories can impact people?
Yes, I do. But, and I know you might not like this. See, I told you weren't going to like me. I told you this. Didn't I tell you this at the beginning? You were like, she's so lovely. I'm like, oh, you haven't heard me yet. I do love stories, but I I am I'm a very sort of outcomes driven person. So and Oh, look, I'm really impatient. So sometimes when I see a story, I'm like, can you just tell me what's in it for me? Like, give me the headline. And then if
Mm.
I'm interested, then I'll read the story. So what I'm not a fan of is stories that start off sort of once upon a time. And I'm like, no, just tell me what I'm going to get out of it. Tell me the lesson. And then I'll decide if I want to read the story. So
Got
I
it.
I I know that sounds awful, and you probably hate that answer, but I just wish that people would front load their stories with what the key takeaway is. This idea of you've got to reel them in and give them a hook and, and there's got to be all this suspense. I'm like, I don't have time for that. Is that awful? Do you hate me now? Are we leaving on a
No,
bad
not at
note?
all. In fact, no, no, no. It's completely nice because see, one of the things I keep telling to my group or whenever I talk about stories in corporate is that please understand that you don't say story all the time. Number one, all right, because people are gonna eventually get bored and they're gonna come to the say cut short and tell me what are you talking about. I think what you mentioned, and I would take this as that stories are important, and how beautifully you can put it or articulate it is very important. I mean, you're not gonna bore people, but at least in your one sentence, in your 30 seconds or 60 seconds, you can still say something with an impact, you know
Mm.
and which is in a form of like because people think story as once upon a time. I tell them that anything that, let's say, for example, you loved this pen. Now, why you love this pen is a story behind it, in a way, right? There's something behind it. So that's how you put is really important. It's the same thing how, like, Apple does it. Rather than
Mm.
we have a better hardware, we have better this, they just say something in a different manner which gives you the same punchline. So
Yes.
that's how. But I agree with you. And I still like you.
I just think people should get to the punchline straight away and then tell
Yeah.
the story. I also think, yeah, I think it's a real fine line between thinking, does this really add value to people? And it might not add value to everybody, but it might land with some people. And that's where I think stories are really powerful. It's what I love about your work is I believe in possibility models. I think you can't be what you can't see. And I remember when I first started my journey on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn profile writer, I was looking at Andy Foote, and there was and Vivica von, oh, I can't remember her last name, Vivica van Ross something. And I was looking at her years ago, like decades ago, and going, oh, I could be a LinkedIn profile writer because there's LinkedIn profile writers in America. There's none here in Australia. I could do that. So I love this idea of possibility models. And I think stories help people see what is possible, and they help people like me to see that, oh my gosh, if others have done it, maybe I could do it. Just maybe. And I think we need those stories, because if we don't have stories, we don't have dreams.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely right. I think that's the whole point. Is that if someone is going through a rough patch, and when they listen, like your story of you coming from different neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods, how you went through everything, and where you are right now, even if we listen to that piece, somebody might say that, yeah, it's okay, I'm in bad neighborhood. Look at Karen where she is. I think it's just a matter of time. I don't have to lose hope. There are people like me, and I still have to keep moving.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the beauty of your story now, is because it's going to impact somebody to make sure that they keep going and not take some weird decision in the middle of their life or in the
Mm,
early stages of their life. So,
absolutely. And check out Sam Swirsky too. Sam Swirsky, if you're listening to this and it's resonating, because I just think there are so many of us who are pretty normal people, fighting normal battles, and it's just about persisting. It's just about keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So, with that, I'm going to ask Karen to share her last words, but after I say something. So, please connect with Karen if you want to know more about it, learn about LinkedIn. She has got a lot of free resources that she can give it away. Follow her on LinkedIn, go through a lot of featured articles that she has put across, and you learn a ton of things on LinkedIn. Of course, you already got a lot of information here on this not call, sorry, this podcast today. And if you want to come to my show and impact the way Karen did, just ping me and I'll get back to you. With that, Karen, I thank you very much for coming on to the show and really, really blessing me and my guests. And over to you for last words to the viewers.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. I do pinch myself every day with where I am, and I know that it's still a work in progress, and I've got even more that I can achieve. But I just yeah, I just want to say thank you. Success never happens in isolation. So if you're listening to this, I'm grateful to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much once again. Thank you to all the lovely viewers, your questions, and all the likes and loves. And thank you, Karen. God bless you and have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Cheers, Amit. Thank you.
Bye bye.